The Silicon Valley Traitors, How 8 Rebels Built the Future. In 1957, 8 young scientists did something that had never been done before. They looked their boss in the eye, a Nobel Prize winner, the man who literally invented the transistor, and quit. All of them, at once. He called them traitors. The press called them the Traitorous Eight. History would call them the founding fathers of Silicon Valley. But on that September morning, they had nothing but $500 each, a garage, and an idea that would reshape every aspect of human civilization. The year was 1957. World War II had ended 12 years earlier, but America was still buzzing with the technological electricity of wartime research. In a quiet suburb south of San Francisco, a company called Fairchild Semiconductor Laboratory held an almost mythical status. It was the first company built to commercialize the transistor, that miraculous little device that could amplify and switch electrical signals. The man in charge was William Shockley, co-inventor of the transistor, winner of the Nobel Prize, and arguably the most celebrated scientist in America. But Shockley was also paranoid, domineering, and increasingly disconnected from his own engineers. He hoarded key research, mistrusted his team, and focused on an impossible dream of a fourth-layer diode while the rest of the world moved forward. The 8 young physicists and engineers working under him, brilliant men recruited from the best laboratories in the country, watched their talent rot in stagnation. They had ideas, they had drive, they had nothing to lose. So they made a decision that would cost them their jobs, their reputations, and nearly everything they had. They decided to build their own company. Without funding, without experience, without permission, and in doing so, they invented the template for every tech startup that would follow. Item start. Number 7. Julius Blank. The least famous of the 8 was also the first to experience the full weight of Shockley's wrath. Julius Blank was the one who actually typed up the formal resignation letter, a document that would become one of the most consequential pieces of paper in American business history. When Shockley discovered the conspiracy, he demanded to know who had organized it. Blank refused to name names. Shockley fired him on the spot. But Blank's story didn't end in a garage. After Fairchild, he went on to found several more companies, including one that manufactured equipment for testing integrated circuits. He quietly contributed to the semiconductor equipment industry for decades, building the tools that other engineers would use to create the chips inside every computer, phone, and satellite. The man who refused to rat out his friends helped build the testing infrastructure that the entire industry still relies on today. Transition. But Blank was just the messenger. The real architect of the escape was someone even Shockley considered his favorite employee, until that September morning. Item start. Number 6. Victor Greenwich. Victor Greenwich was the intellectual of the group. A former student of the legendary physicist J. Robert Oppenheimer, Greenwich had a mind that could see patterns where others saw chaos. When Shockley gathered his engineers for yet another meeting about his impossible diode project, Greenwich quietly calculated the physics in his head and knew it wouldn't work. He also knew the others had reached the same conclusion. Greenwich became one of the key organizers of the exit, using his connections to help secure early funding. But his greatest contribution came after Fairchild itself. He co-founded another semiconductor company and later wrote one of the first comprehensive textbooks on integrated electronics, helping educate an entire generation of engineers who would flood into the industry in the 1960s and 1970s. Where some rebels built companies, Greenwich built knowledge. Transition. Knowledge was valuable, but what they really needed was money. And one of the 8 had exactly that connection. If you're finding these stories as insane as I am, you'll love the related books we've linked in the description. Every click supports the channel's research. Item start. Number 5. Sheldon Roberts. Sheldon Roberts was the businessman the group desperately needed. While the scientists dreamed of revolutionary circuits, Roberts knew they needed capital to make those dreams real. He was the one who approached Sherman Fairchild, the wealthy founder of Fairchild Camera and Instrument Corporation, with a pitch that would change history. Roberts convinced Fairchild to invest $1.3 million in a company that didn't exist yet, a staggering sum in 1957. Without that funding, the 8 would have had nothing but their garage and their ambition. Roberts also helped establish Fairchild Semiconductor's early manufacturing operations, turning theoretical designs into actual products that could be sold. He understood that invention alone wasn't enough. You had to be able to build it, ship it, and sell it. That simple truth would define Silicon Valley for the next 70 years. Transition. But even the best businessman needs engineers who can actually design the products. And 2 of those engineers would go on to create the most important invention in modern electronics. Item start. Number 4. Eugene Kleiner. Eugene Kleiner was 28 years old when he walked out of Shockley's lab. He was also one of the most technically gifted engineers in the group, with a particular talent for process engineering, the art of actually manufacturing semiconductors reliably and at scale. At Fairchild, he helped perfect the planar process, a manufacturing technique that allowed circuits to be printed onto silicon wafers with unprecedented precision. But Kleiner's true legacy came decades later. In 1972, he co-founded Kleiner Perkins, one of the first venture capital firms dedicated exclusively to technology startups. From that perch, he would go on to fund Google, Amazon, Netscape, and dozens of other companies that defined the digital age. The rebel who helped build Fairchild became the rebel who funded everyone else. He turned the act of quitting into an industry, a systematic, repeatable engine for disrupting established industries. The venture capital model Kleiner helped create has funneled hundreds of billions of dollars into tech companies around the world. Transition. Money and manufacturing were essential, but what they really needed was a breakthrough, a new way to build circuits that would make the transistor look primitive. Item start. Number 3. Gene Horney. Gene Horney was a Swiss-born perfectionist with an almost obsessive attention to detail. When he looked at the primitive semiconductors being produced in 1957, he saw a fundamental problem. They were fragile, inconsistent, and almost impossible to manufacture at scale. So he invented a solution that would make modern computing possible. Horney developed the planar process, a method of creating transistors and circuits by layering materials on top of a flat silicon surface and using photographic techniques to carve precise patterns. Before Horney,